Hello and welcome to another episode of Business on the Wire. As India grapples with COVID and its impact, the bigger crisis is unfolding on roads across our nation. Swaths of migrant laborers are trying to make their way home with little by way of support or infrastructure. What are the possible solutions on both ends for this labor force and indeed for the establishments that may now struggle to keep people employed? Joining me now is Prem Shankar Jha, renowned economist and author, to discuss what the solutions could be and where the outcome might lie. Thank you, Mr. Jha, for joining in. There is an incredible humanitarian crisis unfolding before us with large swaths of migrant laborers trying to make their way across the country. A, do you think this could have been stopped? And B, what kind of damage control do you think can be put in place now?
Yes, the size of the crisis is, if it's allowed to develop, is almost unimaginable. There are 139 million migrant workers as of 2011. The figure is probably closer to 160 million today. Of them, a 2017, economic survey figure shows that 9 million lived out of their own state. They were working out of their own state, which means hundreds and thousands of kilometers away. And these people have suddenly been found that they've lost they cannot go to work, they're not allowed to move out, and they've lost their jobs. Therefore, their employers are saying, we will not pay you. Their landlords are saying, get out because you're a threat to us. And they're now on the streets with no food and no money. Maybe the money they saved, that's about all. Now, if nothing were done, this would be the catastrophe of all, to beat all color. It would make the German Holocaust, sort of kind of a joke. The truth is that, fortunately, that it is not so. Yes, this could have been foreseen, and much, because it really doesn't require much economics. You need to know very limited economics, and the solutions also are very simple. For someone who's a sort of an on-the-ground economist, as distinct from someone who's just constantly, juggling with the statistics and multiple linear regressions and so on. But which is this, that you need, first of all, to meet the costs of keeping the economy in a state where it can continue to work the moment the lockdown is over. And the second is that you must prevent the people who are in the towns from going to their villages, because if you do not do the first, they will do the second. And this should have been foreseen. And that is what is happening today.
The other big problem that is unfolding is in terms of transport, supply, and indeed whether or not some of the smaller enterprises that employed this migrant labor will actually survive. How do you think those pillars can be supported, both what we do with the smaller establishments and what we seem to be struggling with in terms of supply, transport of essentials?
Well, first of all, the government has the duty to make sure, a moral duty, to make sure that every last one of the enterprises that was working before the lockdown survived. Because if it dies, it will be because of an act of government. It will be the government killing them. Therefore, the first thing you do is you say, I will take over whatever costs you incur, which are ongoing costs during the period of lockdown. These are all the fixed costs, or what are called establishment costs: rent, air conditioning, maintenance, electricity, these costs, and then also capital, loans, and the servicing of those loans, paying interest and the amortization on that. All that carries on, and it'll just pile up. The longer you don't let them work, and they'll break down under the weight even when they start working. So that is the first thing that the government has to do. And then in exchange, it can demand that you do not allow any of your workers to go. And it says that the government needs to also, for them, say that at least 80% of the income that they were getting, we will meet for you. And in the case of migrants, and in the case of non-migrants, at least 50%. Now, these are ballpark figures that I worked out, but they can be improved upon. But basically, that is the idea. So I would say that these are the two things that are required at this moment, more than anything else. Third point, you raised about those migrants who've gone away. How do you handle them? I think I think I have to give full credit to Yogi Adityanath, that the moment he saw them crossing out of Delhi into UP, he sent buses to collect them. He collected them in centers. They were tested before they were allowed to go home, and they're given papers to put on their homes to show that they are in quarantine, so that not only they should not break quarantine, but others should not allow them to break quarantine. Now, this system has to be done countrywide. I am sure it's being done in the south, because those governments are by and large more responsible and more stable than the ones in the north. But it needs especially to be done in our northern belt. And the fact that an otherwise rather chaotic government like UP is doing it so well is something that we should, that gives me hope.
Mm.
Last point, again, I'm going to repeat it because it is connected, is that since in any case people will get to the villages, it is important to remember that it is not the young, it is not those tough young people you see walking on the streets or try to walk home 80 kilometers who really are going to be victims of COVID. Not unless the walk exhausts them so much that their body has no strength left. That, of course, can be preempted is being preempted by providing transport. Now, they are the ones you can keep them. You can keep them under observation, but the fact is that they are not going to die. All the data from all over the world shows that the death rate below 60 is negligible. The death rate below 40 doesn't exist. It's really it rises above 60 and rises more above 70 and becomes very serious over 80. So it is in villages that all the pradhans and so on should be told, look, whatever medical facilities you have, whatever medicines you need, remember, whatever doctors you have, keep a vigilant eye on the old and the infirm, those who already have diseases. They are the ones to save. The others will save themselves. And if the young can continue, are unlikely to go down, even if they get corona, they can work in the fields. There's no need for the farm produce to be allowed to rot. There's no need for fruit not to be picked. There's no need for grain not to be taken to the market. Just make sure they all observe the normal social distancing and hygienic things that everybody is being told to do and everybody knows about now, thanks to mobile telephones and WhatsApps.
Mm. This will obviously involve very large sums of money being thrown towards the cause by the finance ministry and by state finance ministers as well, Mr. Jha. One got the sense from the first, communique from the finance ministry that there seemed to be a very tentative approach. Do you think the finance ministry and the government needs to be far more aggressive economically and fiscally in terms of dealing with this crisis?
Mitali, I'm very glad you raised the issue of finance. Most people, particularly in the Ministry of Finance and above all in the Reserve Bank of India, don't know the meaning of finance. If the economy is dead, let's take an extreme example. The economy is dead. Nothing is working. You can print the entire GDP of the USA in terms of notes and throw it out in the streets and nothing will happen. So that money that you print is not money. Money is cash or checks or card or whatever, in whatever form, is a medium of exchange. If exchange stops, the medium ceases to exist. So today, the truth of the matter is that the normal ideas of a fiscal deficit, of revenue deficit, of overspending, all these ideas become irrelevant. Today, you have to realize that the money that you're putting in to keeping the economy going is not consumption. It is investment. because it is only if this money goes in today that you will have production tomorrow. And if you look at it purely as an economist, it is an investment with a return coming to you in as little as 3 months.
Let me ask you a more fatalistic question, perhaps, then, Mr. Jha. What do you think the possible outcome could be 3 months down the line if the government does not act with the ferocity that is required, both in terms of the impact in rural India, where we will have large masses of unemployed people who have travelled from urban dwellings, and in urban India, where many of these establishments may well struggle to survive?
Well, first, I'm both disturbed and in a sense glad that you use the word ferocity. Police methods will not save us. You will only add misery to people. You will make the miserable lives already more miserable. What are you going to do? Okay, somebody is broken or quarantined and gone home to his village. So the village police come, or whatever police come, and they take him to a prison to make sure that he gets COVID there. Is that what's going to work? This is not ferocity. This is tenderness. It's the exact opposite. Look at what Arvind Kejriwal is doing in Delhi. I would suggest Mitali do a program on it, because it is an exemplar for the whole country. But which is to treat, first of all, everybody as a human being in distress who needs help. The government must stop being a policeman, which is all any government in India has been. The British were better than we were in this. We are a more cruel government than anything I remember from the British days, and I did live for 10 years before the British left India. And I can tell you something, that this approach, that we are the boss and we will only deal with you with the danda, is not the answer today. So the first thing you must do is you must tell people, look, we will make sure, it is our duty to make sure that your economic structure, that your capacity to earn is not damaged by our necessary steps to keep you, to save you from the disease. As a helper, we will do all this for you, but you must do your duty. And yes, if you don't do your duty after accepting our help, then hell hath no fury such as you will see from us. On the side of so-called fiscal deficits and so on, just look at what other countries are doing. Every country with a decent set of economists has understood what I just explained to you. The Donald Trump, the man who above all is a neoconservative, neoliberal economic person, if he knows economics at all, he has thrown all neoliberal economics away, and he is committed to spending $2 trillion in sustaining the capacity of the US economy to produce. $2 trillion is 10% of the GDP of the US. It is actually in dollar terms, it's more than the entire GDP of India. And in purchasing power parity terms, it's 80% of our GDP. 10% of the GDP of the richest country in the world, which alone accounts for 37% of the total wealth of the world, he's prepared to spend. Come to Britain. In Britain, we have a buffoon of a prime minister, but at least there are good people working in that. They have not been able to replace a very good bureaucracy. What have they announced? That every single employee, public or private, shall continue to receive 80% of his salary during the period of the lockdown. So that his purchasing power, he doesn't have to move anywhere. He doesn't have to go into an poor man shelter. His purchasing power will not go down. All that will happen is that he'll have to slightly tighten his belt. Then there are huge numbers of unemployed there living like princes by compared to our poor, and they will also suffer a cut, but the cut is going to be one that is entirely bearable. None of them thinks of this money as something you must then chalk up and say, oh my God, my fiscal deficit in the year, what are we at now, 2020, 2021, leapt from 3.2% in the previous year to 17%. And therefore, we must now take severe measures to raise interest rates, curtail spending so that we can come back to 3% again. We have violated the FRBM, the Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act, which the Bajpayee government had passed. There is no such thing. This is a period in which none of these rules apply, because this is not a normal economy. This is a life-saving, life-threatened economy. And you cannot save your people if you cannot save your economy. You can save them from COVID, you cannot save them from starvation. When the supplies start running out, they will turn on each other and they start killing each other. The rate of robberies, particularly in the affluent areas of Delhi, for example, where we all live, will go up so high, it will be unsafe to walk on the streets. So please, this is the most incredibly important thing that has to be done just now.
My final question to you, Mr. Jha, you alluded to some global examples, and there is a fear that this is now, a sense rather, that this is now the return of the big state. Do you think that's something that might begin to happen in India as well, where we move from a socialist light model to a much harder state with less freedom for state governments and much more imposition from the center?
The desire among some people in the present government, or for that matter, in every government we've had since independence, to use any crisis to increase the power of the state and disempower the poor is an ever-present threat. It's an ever-present threat in other democracies too, but it's particularly so in ours. So I would say yes. I think a good example of the opposite is what is being done by Arvind Kejriwal in Delhi. And I urge you to do a program on this as something that everybody in the country can compare with what they are doing, other state governments, and learn from, and in a sense, and improve upon. So this interaction that between the action, between state governments and what they're doing, if we can project that or promote that, it will be a tremendous benefit. So I think that this is where we need to go. The big state will come only. One of the reasons why the people start using danda, because they have no other idea what to do. At this moment, police are beating up people who were in the markets, but that's not the solution. The solution is actually to tell the market people, close your shops. Don't you dare keep them open, but we'll meet your fixed costs. Then there's no reason for the people to go there except to specified supplies and medical and food supply shops. Milk, food, medicines. That's it. So the governments in India have never been, they were, for 200 years under the British, they were both exploitative, and they thought they were the lord and master. It was a lord and servant relationship. We incorporated the whole of that into our constitution. Our bureaucracies are completely unaccountable. Our politicians are utterly corrupt. They answer to no one. So in fact, the temptation to turn any crisis into another acquisition of still more powers by the state, still more legislation, still more dandas, is always there, but it must be resisted now, and it must be resisted by the people, us. We must tell them, you just can't get away with it. We're going to fight you to the teeth if you go down that road. But once again, let me say this, from what I've been watching on TV, I don't think this is the direction in which the state governments are going. And the central government is perfectly happy for once to let the state governments take the lead. To me, this shift in responsibilities is one of the most healthy things that happened for the future of the country.
Thank you very much for your time and insight, Mr. Jha. I appreciate your time today and for speaking with us as well. Thank you.